Hello, everybody. I'm Elaine Nash, Acting Director of the Homes for Horses Coalition. Welcome to today's webinar, Donkeys Are Not Short Horses with Long Ears. We have a great turnout today. We really appreciate so many people joining us, and it really goes to show how many people are really interested in the differences between what donkeys need and what horses need. So many people involved in the world of horses really don't understand the big differences that exist between providing what donkeys need compared to what horses need. Today, we're going to try to help you with some of that. Marjorie Farabee is our lead presenter today. She's going to speak to us about the unique needs of donkeys in areas touching on their unique dietary needs, health challenges and treatments that have been found for those issues, hoof care, emotional needs. They're highly sensitive, intelligent, loyal animals that are very different from horses. She's going to talk about that. And there's some very serious advocacy issues that apply to donkeys that are different from the global crisis that horses are also in. Marjorie is the director of equine knowledge and development for TMR Rescue, also known as Texas Miracle Ranch. It's home to over 400 rescued donkeys and burros in Plantersville, Texas, near Houston. She's also the director of Wild Burro Affairs with the Wild Horse Freedom Federation and founder of the Wild Horse Burro Protection League. In addition to her work with TMR's hundreds of donkeys, Marjorie's also traveled to the states where wild burros are most at risk, observing these critically endangered animals and working on solutions to their near extinction because of mass removals from public lands by BLM. Marjorie has also traveled to the UK, Spain, Portugal, and Bonaire to meet with veterinarians, trainers, and scientists who specialize in these animals and their unique health and emotional needs and the dangers they face around the world. Brad and Amber Wann and family, also known as Team Wann, are with us today. We asked them to join us to tell us and show us what's involved in the interesting sport of donkey racing. Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about jockeys on donkeys running around a track. This is donkeys and humans on foot leading each other in marathon competitions. As the sport of donkey racing grows and spreads across the country, we think that this unique sport may present fun and potentially profitable opportunities for rescues, especially those with long-eared residents, to host donkey races, to bring together donkey adopters and owners and fans in their areas just for fun and fundraising and awareness building about donkeys. This is a sport where humans and donkeys have to develop partnerships and work out things together, and sometimes it can be pretty funny. Brad and Amber Wann are diehard burro folks. They live in Colorado. Amber and her folks got the pack burro bug in 2008, and Brad joined them in 2009. Now, Brad, who's a furniture master by trade, has been an enthusiastic spokesman for burro racing for over 10 years and is the longest serving board member of the Western Pack Burro Association, the organization that sanctions pack burro races. He was also instrumental in the passage of the Colorado House Joint Resolution that made pack burro racing Colorado's official summer heritage sport. Burro racing is more than a hobby for the Wanns these days. Brad and Amber and all 4 of their kids have competed in many races. The Wanns own Colorado Burro Rentals, where they train racing burros, coach future human competitors, and provide burros for racers who don't own their own burros. After Marjorie teaches us about the unique needs that donkeys have on many levels, We'll turn things over to the Wanns to tell us more about what they do and how pack burro and donkey races work. They have some of their family team members and some of their donkeys with them today, so this should be a lot of fun. All right, Marjorie, take it away.
Okay. So, hi everybody. I just wanted to say that when Elaine asked me to have a discussion about donkeys, I was excited at the opportunity to talk about these fun, talented, remarkable beings I have grown to love to the depths of my soul. But just like people, they're all different individuals. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with how I would talk about donkeys and who I would be talking to. So I would just want to let you know I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not a professional farrier, and I'm not an equine dentist. But what I am is well schooled by professionals. I've traveled to Spain, Portugal, and UK specifically to learn more about donkeys. Every year I attend the Donkey Welfare Symposium, which caters to enthusiasts and veterinarians. And unfortunately, we really sorely missed it during the pandemic. As you can see here, I have this is a beautiful Miranda donkey, also called the Zamora de Leones. They're located in between Portugal and Spain. So it depends on if you're in Spain or Portugal as to what you're calling them. I used to compete in driving and snigging, marathon racing, and other events with donkeys and mules. So I really wanted to see, what kind of donkeys were out there. So we traveled to go see them. We also wanted to learn about some of the dental practices that they use. They don't sedate donkeys in Europe to do their teeth. Donkeys, when you raise their heads, they're wise enough to know not to move, and so you avoid the whole effect of sedation, that the poor effects of sedation on donkeys if you can do it without the sedation. Since 2006, I've overseen the care of hundreds of donkeys, mules, and horses at our rescue here in Texas. At TMR Rescue, we have seen as many conditions, diseases, and illnesses over the year, and it's really hard to wrap my mind around, because every time I think I am figuring it out, a new thing comes up. This is little Shaw. He was born blind during Hurricane Harvey. So it's our good fortune that we're blessed with great access to excellent veterinarians close to us. Texas A&M is 45 minutes away, and our primary veterinarians are at Brazos Valley Equine Hospital. They're only 30 minutes away, which is very helpful. It's been a journey, but no matter how much you learn, there's always something new that will be a puzzle to solve. This is little Charlie, and he was 3 months old when we finally figured out that his problem was that he had a liver shunt. And by the time that we figured it out, the diagnosis came a little too late, so we lost this little guy. But that's where the name of the Charlie Project came from, was, learning, how much the differences in horses and donkeys can make a difference as to whether a donkey lives or dies, because veterinarians have to go by horse values, because the values for donkeys are not well documented. So he had to have another donkey come in. We rescued another donkey that was Charlie's age, and it was by comparing those values that he was able to finally run it down and figure out that Charlie had a liver shunt. And it's really important that you develop a good relationship with your vet, your farrier, and all who work on your equine. Never go online and ask advice about urgently needed medical care, and listen to people who are not professionals. Check with your vet, check with your farrier before taking any advice from non-professionals. I have seen advice given to people that actually could actually kill their animal if the advice was taken. So it really be very careful about who you're getting your advice from. It's critically important that you develop a good relationship with your vet. Indeed, one thing I do know from working with donkeys is that they're not small horses with long ears. Evolution plays a big part in these differences. True, like horses and zebras, they are from the same family tree and began their evolutionary process in North America. Their tremendous jawbone developed as they completed their evolution in Northern Africa, where forage became much tougher and in shorter supply. In these harsh conditions, they develop the ability to use every bit of moisture their body takes in. A donkey can go up to 4 days without water and rehydrate in 2 minutes. They can lose up to 30% of their body mass through dehydration and survive. To put this into context, the loss of 5% of body mass through dehydration of a human requires a hospital stay of 24 hours to rehydrate. They really are amazing, amazing animals. Their ears provide a cooling system as well as excellent hearing over a long distance, allowing communication with other donkeys where forage is in short supply. Their voices carry long distance for the same reason. Weakness from injury or sickness will put them at great risk of being targeted by predators, so they had developed a stoic behavior to pain. It doesn't mean they're not expressive. They are. But when it comes to pain and illness, they hide it well. For domestic donkey owners, it's very important to learn how your donkey behaves. If they are quiet and standoffish or stand with their ears to the side like an airplane wing, immediate attention is required. They are probably more unwell than they appear. So many of the differences we see in donkeys compared to their ear-challenged equine family is indeed due to evolution. Evolution has given donkeys the appearance of being stubborn because of their known trait of freezing when they're asked to do something new. This is not stubbornness. This is the evolutionary process at work. If a donkey were to run off from a resource, such as water or forage, or faced with danger in harsh terrain, a panic reaction to negative stimulation could result in death. So donkeys stop when they're unsure of a situation so they can decide how to react. The more afraid they are, the more they freeze. It's important that you understand your donkey. Some expressions that are accepted as defiance are actually fear. Being able to move out without a prominent tail also saves donkeys from harm. So learn your donkey. They can move very quickly without a strong warning. And don't look at them freezing as being stubbornness. They really are letting you know that they are concerned, and there's a lot of different levels of concern, from being concerned to utterly terrified. So the worst reaction you can have is to get angry with them. While a horse will react to negative stimulus with fear, negative stimulus with a clear showing of fear, people miss that fear in donkeys. They're just as afraid as the horse who is running for the hills, but the donkey is not showing fear outwardly like the dramatic reaction of a horse. Sadly, the stoicism causes donkeys a great deal of grief and misunderstanding from human handlers. The donkey's evolution in the harshest conditions on Earth also shaped their traits and behaviors. Donkeys roam in very small groups when resources are scarce. Generally, where resources are in short supply, it will be a Jenny, her last year's offspring, and a new offspring. Jacks tend to travel alone to dominate resources such as forage areas and water, thus providing access to open Jennies when they come for feeding or drinking. Kind of a stealthy way of doing it, but yeah, they lord over the resources, and the Jenny has to come to them. When resources are more plentiful, matriarchal groups will form with a dominant Jack present. Older male offspring are run off from the group, and the environment is key to how donkeys will behave. This holds true in domestic settings as well. A change from one pasture to another or from one group to another can affect a donkey's behavior. Domestic donkeys carry a trait of greed, overfeed, and treats because they are wired by DNA to fight for resources. They must be taught to behave while food is present. Bonds between donkeys starts from the close relationship Jennies have to their young. For domestic donkeys, bonds between friends can be quite profound. The loss of a friend should be cause for concern for any donkey owner. In fact, yes, donkeys can die from loneliness. The depression and loss of appetite can set off a reaction called hyperlipemia, which left untreated can be fatal. This also goes back to evolution. Donkeys are extremely proficient in their use of food. Physically, their body triggers a starvation mode that won't turn off easily. When they go into a negative energy balance, their body releases lipids into their bloodstream. So sadness for a donkey can be fatal. Food intake must be watched carefully when separation is unavoidable. It's a sad thing when they lose a friend. Nutrition is a subject of much debate with donkey enthusiasts. Much confusion seems to originate with donkeys being so efficient in how they process food. In fact, they take 6 hours longer than a horse to digest for their food to pass through their systems. This means that overfeeding donkeys is a common problem. Unfortunately, this has led to advice that leaves donkeys starved nutritionally. For an equine, the process of chewing is critically important to internal health. The saliva produced while chewing helps to protect the lining of the esophagus. And in winter, the breakdown of forage in the hindgut produces body heat. So how do you feed a donkey constantly and not have them get fat, which is a life-threatening condition for donkeys? You can keep your donkeys prone to weight gain happy by providing their hay through a net with small holes, and if available, you can mix straw in with their nutritious hay. They are able to chew but not grab mouthfuls. Provide incentive to move around by setting up a track system on a dry lot. Donkeys need nutrition, but they cannot be allowed to get obese. It's a dilemma faced by many donkey owners. Not all donkeys are the same, and not all regions of the country are the same. Diet for a donkey is individual and regional. Your feed program should take into account whether your donkey is working, pulling a cart, packing, donkey trekking, racing. Perhaps your donkey has given birth. Maybe your donkey came to you in poor condition or is elderly and missing teeth. Perhaps you live in a part of the country where grass is thick and green, and you may live where cactus grows. These regional changes make a difference in how you supplement your donkey's diet. True, they can live on very poor forage, but to make them bloom, you need to help get them what they need without allowing them to overindulge. Your eyes are your best monitor for how your donkey is doing on your feed program. It's important to note that all donkeys need to have their sugar and protein intake limited. Sweet feeds and feeds high in molasses should be avoided and never used. There are some very good pelleted feeds that are low in sugar and protein. They don't need much to provide the extra immune support that these feeds provide. Feeding a small amount of commercial feed is also a great way to slip the medications and a good overall supplement such as AZ copper, or at the least powdered elevate for dry lotted equine. Coming in to feed also offers a time when your donkey and you can spend time together and you can check their health. Access to clean, fresh water is also a must. In fact, donkeys prefer clear water that is tepid in temperature. Besides evolution, there are other factors that can affect how a donkey behaves. Perhaps your donkey has external or internal parasites. Perhaps your donkey has sore gums caused by a dental issue, or your donkey may have developed ulcers. Or if your donkey is approaching 20 years of age, a Cushing's test could explain behavioral and physical changes in your donkey. This disease of older equine involves the pituitary gland, which in turn affects the endocrine system. Thus, the symptoms can vary greatly. The point is to not just look at environmental factors when assessing changes in your beloved donkey. Sometimes we find that even a change of handlers can have a profound positive or negative effect on behavior. Some donkeys just like certain people more and are not afraid to show it. Like Captain Jose here in Little Brooks, he loves that little boy. Donkeys are also very fragile in many ways too. We place them in unnatural settings when their intelligence urges them to explore. We move them into climates that they are not physically set up to survive well. We have found over the years that foals have a very hard time in Texas dealing with our 90% humidity. We always worry about lungs drying out. Skin conditions are common. Due to the excess amount of rain we get combined with our sandy soil, we really have to pay close attention to hooves. Donkey hooves are more upright than a horse, and their frog, by comparison, is larger and extends far behind the bar of the hoof. So on a horse, it would come right to the back of the bar, but you can see that the padding goes way behind the foot. That's what gives them their athletic ability and their ability to climb up sheer cliffs like a cat. The hooves are also more absorbent than horse hooves, so for some excellent advice on donkey hoof care, look up Megan Hensley of Holistic Hoof. She specializes in donkey hoof care. She has some great videos to get you started on what it takes to have a healthy donkey hoof. Extreme cold is difficult for donkeys. Donkeys who are moved to climates that freeze must have access to shelter. If they shiver, it's a good idea to blanket them. Keeping their flu shot current is important, especially for donkeys. While a horse will certainly get very sick from the flu, they usually recover without much intervention. A donkey, on the other hand, tends to have a much stronger response to flu. The air passages become inflamed, leading to a secondary bacterial infection called pneumonia. This is why the viral flu is so much worse for donkeys. That extra inflammatory response is not isolated to their lungs. Castration is complicated because of this response as well. We will not castrate donkeys once the weather has reached 75 degrees. Even at this cool temperature, their surgical site swells. There's a lot of aftercare involved in caring for a newly castrated donkey. Unless you have a rare animal or one registered for breeding or one that is elderly, you really should get your jacks castrated. It makes them much more trustworthy and easier to handle. It also makes it easier to pasture them with a friend. It's very important that you ask your vet how many castrations they've performed on a donkey. If they're not familiar with donkeys, they may not know that anesthesia affects donkeys differently. Donkeys require more anesthesia to get them under, and it only lasts half as long. That's not the only difference. Donkeys have a much larger blood supply going through their scrotum. For this reason, the methods used to close off the blood vessels of horses are not adequate for donkeys. Donkeys need a stitch to stop the bleeding. Great care of the surgical site during the weeks following castration surgery is really important to having a good outcome with castration. Don't be afraid to ask about your vet's experience for your donkey's safety. It seems donkeys are seldom given the respect they so richly deserve. Without these stalwart, kind animals, civilization would have had a much harder time of expanding. Donkeys have assisted humans for over 5,000 years. Even our own American Western expansion is owed to donkeys and mules. It was a while before horses were used. In the beginning, trails were blazed by the surveyors and prospectors who first entered the West. So many of the contributions of donkeys through history are glossed over or assumed to have been accomplished by horses. Even the donkeys' contributions to war, they didn't ask to be there, but they were. At the very least, their sacrifices should be honored as greatly as the horse. I've been advocating for wild burros on our public lands and in Texas, where they have no protections under the Free Roaming Wild Horses and Burro Act because they're not on BLM land. That's something that people don't realize, that Texas does not have BLM lands. And I have also traveled to Costa Rica and Bonaire to study and bring light to the eradication of the last known Nubian asses. They are thought to be extinct, but guess what? They're not. This little island has only 17% of the island is occupied. The rest of it is open, and yet they still feel like they need to eradicate these donkeys. They've been there for 500 years. So I went there and I collected 30 DNA samples, and I brought them through customs, which was not an easy thing to do, so that Gus Cothran could run the DNA. His initial findings found the samples to be Nubian ass. Later, his findings were confirmed by Dr. Francisco Gonzalez at the University of Córdoba, Department of Genetics. What is really sad is that they are continuing the eradication process. So what you're seeing here is a Nubian ass, a live, living Nubian ass. Nubian ass thought to be extinct is alive and well on an island called Bonaire. So now they're in the process of eradicating them from the island, and in the name of conservation. They've been there 500 years and they're integrally linked to the Bonaire ecosystem. It seems pressures are facing donkeys all over the world, even on a little island like this. I have said that donkeys are under pressure all over the world, and they are. In the United States, our wild burro populations have dwindled to numbers that are unhealthy to maintain genetic diversity. The herd management areas that have so few burros in them, they're in trouble genetically. Our burros are unnaturally kept in small herds of fragmented habitat that does not allow for sharing of genetic between herds. Our public lands are not managed for wildlife. Our public lands are managed for livestock ranchers who pay very little for the privilege of cutting off wildlife corridors. Yet to hear special interest groups speak, one would think that wild burros are overpopulated. Where there are human burro conflicts, there are solutions to ease those conflicts. It doesn't always have to mean removal. Simply providing a water supply will solve many conflicts caused by burros crossing roads to get to rivers. Wildlife corridors are also proving very successful in saving wildlife from conflicts with cars. There's not an overpopulation of wild burros. There is a disregard for maintaining wildlife corridors, many of which are fenced over by ranchers leasing graze on our public lands. When these corridors are fenced off, burros are forced into roadways to get to water and to forage. This is happening a lot in Arizona, especially out in the Kingman area. It's pretty awful. In Texas, our wild burros come from the Chihuahua Desert. As you can see, the Chihuahua Desert encompasses the United States and Mexico, and donkeys don't have, they don't recognize international lines, and they do cross over the river frequently, and again, it gets them in trouble. Since burros are not savvy about international lines, they cross when it's low. And unfortunately, Texas Parks and Wildlife has a history of gunning burros down. Still, we do have wild burros in West Texas, and they are a real joy if you're lucky enough to see them. Luckily, donkeys are growing in popularity in Texas. That helps them a lot. People have them as pets, for competition, for guard animals, and companions. And to spend time with a donkey will change a person's opinion of them pretty quickly. There are so many ways to enjoy donkeys. For some, just having a pair of comical buddies who will hang out is plenty. Perhaps you have a more competitive spirit. There are all kinds of events that will capture your interest. Pack burro racing, driving, packing, trekking, and riding are just a few of the sports that you can enjoy with the right donkey for the sport that you are choosing. Just remember, if you're competing with one donkey, you need to bring their friend if you want to keep everyone healthy and happy during the competition. Beer burros are a must to have at a wedding. That's our Miss Savvy, and she does real well for weddings. She's quite the girl. Now, the biggest threat to donkeys worldwide at this time is the donkey skin trade. The Chinese have been boiling down donkey skins for thousands of years to make ijiao. They have their own population of donkeys they have used for this ingredient to traditional Chinese medicine. Their populations of donkeys were enough to supply the elite of Chinese society. However, in the past few decades, as China has developed a middle class, more and more people can afford medicines made with ijiao. So now it's putting a real squeeze on the world's population of donkeys. Not only has an increased affluent middle class added to the pressures of providing enough donkey skins to meet their quota, but exports have increased as well. It will surprise many of you to know that the United States is the third largest importer of ijiao products through Amazon. It will take a concerted effort from everyone to call Amazon and lodge a complaint about the importation of ijiao to the United States. I was absolutely floored when I learned that. The pressure to produce enough ijiao to provide enough inventory seems that nearly 5 million donkeys worldwide will die horrific deaths each year. The Chinese ijiao producers have sent agents all over the world to find pockets of donkeys that can be exploited. When countries agree, it doesn't take long to learn that the Chinese appetite for donkey skins is insatiable, and they're not concerned about conserving populations of donkeys. In third world countries where donkeys are part of a family's livelihoods, donkeys must be guarded at all times. Thieves steal family donkeys, slaughter them, skin them, and leave the carcasses for the family to find later. The humanitarian crisis caused by families losing their only means of livelihood is growing throughout the world. What is really alarming is how unsustainable the aggressive slaughter of donkeys for skins has become. The Chinese need 5 million donkeys every year to meet quota for their product. Donkeys are not fast reproducers. Their gestation is long, 11 and a half to 14 months. They simply are not able to keep up with the pressures on their populations. There is some room for hope. The same growth on middle-class wealth that has put pressures on donkey populations has allowed Chinese citizens the luxury of owning pets. As a result, there's a growing voice of young people opposed to cruelty against animals. It's a little hard to protest in China, but they're there. There are also growing results from producing ijiao from reproducing the cells in labs. Time will tell if these alternatives will make it into the mainstream. For now, you must keep donkeys from being shipped to slaughter. We must protect our small population of donkeys in the United States, and we must stop the exportation of ijiao through Amazon. And with that, go out and have a conversation with your donkey. Tell them you know how special they are and that you will always remember that they are donkeys and not small horses with long ears. Making this adjustment to your thinking will open your mind to understanding them better.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. Oh my gosh, what a huge amount of information to
Well,
pack
you can
into a
see
few
where I was
minutes.
a little, I mean, because each one of those subjects, you could go into hour-long discussion about
Yeah,
with,
that's
you know,
true.
diagrams and stuff like that. So that's why I had to make the choice that I would only touch on it, let people know the issues are there. And if anybody wants to contact me by email, marjorie@tmrrescue.com, I'll be happy to answer more in-depth questions there. In the meantime, we've got an opportunity to answer some here.
Yes, we'll do a Q&A after we hear from the one. So thank you so much, Marjorie. Let's turn it over now to Brad and Amber, who I think you guys are out with your donkeys with us today, aren't you?
We are. Can you hear me good?
We can hear you great. Not seeing you yet. Is everybody else seeing the wands live? I'm
Right
not.
here. Am I unmuted?
We can hear you, but your video is not coming through. If you could start your video for us, please. The field for us folks, so the connection may be a little funky.
Okay, are we all set now?
I can hear you.
Looking good. We
Sydney?
can see and hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. All right, Amber, they can see us. Come on in. Well, let me introduce everyone. First off, my name is Brad Wann. I'm the media relations for the Western Pack Burro Association. This is my lovely wife, Amber Wann, and she is the professional matchmaker for burros. And she does a phenomenal job engineering and logistically training people from all over the globe on how to do this wonderful sport. Next to me here is our son, Benjamin Wann. He's been featured in the latest book by Christopher McDougall, Running with Sherman, as we talk about connection, the disconnect between humans and animals. And it's a great book if you had not had an opportunity to pick it up and read it. Yeah, and then we have Burrito here, and he is quite the character. Burrito's about 20 years old, and he's one of our older animals that we have. We have 15 donkeys, and we share them with the world, and so that everyone can have an opportunity to experience what we get to experience. Pack Burro Racing. There in 1949, Pack Burro Racing was conceived by Fairplay, Colorado, and Leadville, Colorado. The legend is that two miners were in a bar, and they said, "My ass is faster than your ass." They drew a line in the street, and they took off and slapped leather out of town. And the first one back was the winner. The other legend is two miners struck gold at the same time. They had to stake their claim. So they put all their provisions on their trusty donkey, and then they slapped leather to town. The first one to town got the gold claim. The true history of the sport is these mining towns in Colorado were dying, and they needed a way to keep them alive. As the mines closed, the towns became more of a destination place for tourism. So burro racing was invented to bring in revenue to towns, to give the donkeys that once gave the town so much revenue a job. And so we have kept that alive for 73 years that we're about to enter. So Pack Burro Racing is, as you learned earlier, the only sport that's indigenous to Colorado. We started here and stayed here. And as you heard, in 2012, we made it the state sport of Colorado. So burro racing is alive and well. We are hitting numbers, almost tapping 100 entrants to each one of these races. We had caps at 80 in Georgetown and Idaho Springs this weekend, and I got to tell you, we had to turn people down. Teams from all over were trying to get in, and it was just phenomenal to see the overwhelming support. But due to the pandemic, we had to put some limits on the races, which we really have never done before. In 2020, we're pretty much the only sport that had every single race. We were able to pull off the Triple Crown. We have a Triple Crown winner. We brought back the old Hall of Fame race where we raced from Leadville, Colorado to Fairplay, Colorado. It hadn't been done since 1976. And so we got to bring back a lot of history. We're very proud of our network of people and our racers and the people that support this sport. Pack Burro Racing is about a connection between humans and animals. It's something, once you do it, or once you see it, you'll never forget it. And once you do it, it's hard to walk away. It just becomes part of your soul. It's something that less than 1,000 people on the planet have ever done. It is something that becomes a web of your fiber once you become a part of this great sport. So we are excited to continue the legacy of the miners and the legacy of the people that have owned these great animals, that use them all over the globe. And we will continue to keep promoting safety, the animal, and promoting the towns in which we run in, to bring in revenue for the towns, to find jobs for these great critters, and to continue to grow the sport. Right? Good boy. That's all right, buddy. So he's been standing here a bit. It's a little warm out here today, but we're all good. But so Pack Burro Racing is something that we want to make sure that we can get into other states. We want to talk about how that works and what that looks like. So if you want to start stuff like this, you want to start with trail runs and trail walks and hikes. You can do small distances first, 1-2 mile. Just get the burros together in groups. You can get them walking. The other donkeys are all leaving. Can you hop around on this side? And Amber, can you put pressure behind him? There we go. Right, come on. Come on, buddy. Good boy. All right. So we would like to see people in other states. This year we had races in California. We had 2 races in Arizona. We had a race in Tennessee. So the sport, and of course, we're going to have 8 or 9 races here in California, Colorado. And we're seeing the sport grow pretty well, pretty fast, but we want it to grow safe. We want it to grow so that people are doing it the right way and they aren't getting harmed. When a burro race starts, these races fly out of town at a 5 or 6 minute mile. So the burros get hyped up, they get super excited, and he keeps backing up. So anyway, we want to make sure that everyone is having a good time. And to continue on with the training, Amber's going to get more into it here in a minute, but we just encourage people to gather, as Marjorie mentioned, in groups, and try to work your way through all the small hiccups that you're going to have, because it's never the burro's fault. 95% of the time when there's a mistake made, it's made by the human and not the donkey. You know, we're basically just the GPS. We're the motivators, we're the GPS, we tell them where to go, and we build a bond with these animals. And so building this bond is the most important part of being with your burro. And that's letting them know that they're not in harm's way, that they're safe, and that they can continue on. All right, we're gonna let Amber, I'm gonna give her my microphone and let her get to talk.
This one here?
Yep.
Okay. All right, can you hear me? All right. Well, so like Brad said, I'll kind of start with, as far as starting a we do want to hold down here at the start. For folks coming from out of state, wanting to run these races, it's one thing that you line up and you have all the gear and everything. If you've been with your burro, more than likely, if you're leaving the paddock or their own pasture, they're actually not going to run much. They usually get what we call barn sours. So when you do start a race, you obviously want to start way down here on the halter. That's a little safer to start. Gets control, also limits the amount of the other donkeys kind of kicking up and potentially kicking other people or other donkeys as they get frisky at the start. So I do have a running group page that we have on social media. I highly recommend any rescues, creating maybe a special place for runners to kind of congregate. If there are a group of people that have adopted burros and wanting to do these activities wherever you're at, it's a great way to start. Now we realize that not everybody will have a saddle to start with, and but we do highly recommend thinking about investing in one, because when you do finally pick up the pace or you are out there hiking with your burro, even if it's not for a race, it's really great to just have these tools on the donkey, because they get to carry carry your water and your cell phone and your provisions and snacks and things like that, and take the weight off of your back, you know. So it can be hot, it can be tiring, but the burros don't mind at all. They're really easy to saddle. We've taken some feral burros, and after about a week or so of handling, we can kind of put a saddle on them gently. It is just a little bit smaller, the size on this one. It's just a pack burro.
15-inch.
15-inch sideboard saddle. Burrito is a standard, and so what we do here, obviously we brushed in already, and we put the pad, any other saddle pad you would put on. You want to kind of comb it down, you know, put it up high and kind of comb it down the hair so that the hair is not brushed up or anything. We also brush his belly, make sure there's no burrs or anything in there. And so rather than just saddling, you know, just double cinching like this, if you've got a double cinch, what we like to do on this back cinch, so we'll start to saddle both, okay, strap both on, but then this back cinch we actually like to kind of bring in toward this front one. So we'll actually crisscross one time. So your back cinch is just crisscrossing down to the front one. Reason why is because during a race, as these donkeys go uphill and downhill, extreme hills, and they're running and bouncing and everything, you want this secure, but this helps prevent this front cinch from going up into the armpit and actually creating any wounds or sores and stuff, because they don't have as much hair down here, and so they can get a little tender. So we'll kind of just cinch this up this way, and you can just see, I'll do this real quick. And so we just kind of crisscross it just enough to kind of pull that in, okay? And then we'll bring this around to the left, over to the right, and do that tie knot, just like that. And then the front one, you just tighten that one up and bring it around like regular here. Yep. And so you always want to check these out also before you get to racing, or before you get to going really fast. And sometimes they can get loose in a race if the burros are going really fast. So you've got to kind of watch your gear and everything, make sure everything's leveled out. So we do in the races carry mining pick and shovel combination. Sometimes people will put those on top of the saddle or inside a bag. Other bag options that we have here that Mountain Ridge Gear makes is really cool. Just a little day pack and everything. When you're hiking, you can put snacks, a little windbreaker jacket in here, and all that, and then also a place for your water bottle, a big water bottle. So there's some bigger ones as well on the side, and then also carry more provisions and whatnot. So Mountain Ridge Gear has great, they've got saddles as well, and everything that you need for racing or packing that you could use for your burro. But again, if you don't have these things, don't worry about it. Burros can run without this as well. And so yeah, and we're no longer requiring the weight on the pack saddles. For some that are familiar with the sport, we originally had a minimum of 33 pounds, and we would weigh those in. As the race has gotten bigger, it actually does take up so much more time in the mornings, and it was just, you know, also to keep our gear a little bit, we would put like rocks and stuff in, and we don't need all that anymore. So, but now the weight is just what the saddle is and what our gear is and everything. So, so pretty much that's a really great setup, and doesn't need to be too tight in the back or too tight in the front. Your britch and your breast collar, and just kind of keeping the saddle from rising forward or falling off in back. So I'm also going to explain a couple of the other gears and everything. We do wear just regular running clothes, whatever you feel comfortable in. I like to wear these kind of sports gloves. They are a little half cut off, like weightlifting gloves, and sometimes we'll wear gaiters with our shoes to keep rocks out and everything like that. We prefer the flat Weaver halters because it keeps it flat on their nose. The reason why we don't typically use the rope halters or recommend them, rope halters are great for ground training and ground work if you're doing obstacle courses and whatnot with your burro. But for racing, we highly recommend these. It just keeps it flat on their nose, as the rope halters they've got the little knots on there. They can shift. They're a little looser. They don't fit donkeys as easy, and they can shift and be up in the eye, and it's a little harder to control actually. So we also put like seatbelt pads on these as well. If you've got a donkey that has a sensitive nose and kind of can rub a little bit, we put the lead rope underneath their halter here. Some people like to put them on the side, either way. And we make these lead ropes. You can buy a 15-foot lead rope. But we like to put in 15 foot is the max that you can have in a pack burro race. I like as much rope as I can get. So we make our own, because the 15-foot ones that you would buy and put knots in it to anchor yourself would actually shorten to like 14 feet or something like that. But we put I put an extra knot here in this front part, so that way you can kind of have a place to hang on to. He's backing away from me. Come here, burrito. Come here. I'm not going to run just yet. So, all right, bud, good boy. So I'm gonna just show on the side. So we never take the lead rope and we never tie it super tight on our hands at all. You can get caught up. The donkeys could run away. We want to be able to let the donkey go. If they do get to going too fast, most of the time, if you're in a group, they'll run up to the next burro or stop to eat. So so not to worry, not to get hurt. Okay, but we do have loose. We do our loose leads, and Burrito is ready to run. And so so we keep them loose, hang on here, and then you can also hold on to the pack saddle if you need to when you're running. And so let's get him all set up here. He knows. Come on, bud. Good boy. So we've got a knot here, and then I've also got a knot towards the back here. Bring him forward a little bit so I can stay in camera. All right, good boy. And so there's a knot back here, and so what do, like on an uphill, even if you're hiking, it's nice to just kind of put this between your burro and yourself. And I'll just hold, we've got a knot on the end as well, and I just kind of hold on to this. We never tie in. I try not to be attached. Some people make some devices that attach on, but I like to be able to kind of pull away from my burro if it gets a little crazy with the terrain, just depending. But if you're hiking and whatnot, you can just kind of have your lead rope out here and just drive your donkey up and let them pull you. Also happens in a race. Also, on your way back here, if they do get frisky and need a kick, you're far enough away that they can't kick you. So so highly recommend a really long lead rope. And it is about rope management, because if you are, you know, when we do run on their left side as well. So just like saddling horses, a lot of that takes place on the left side of the animal. You usually, you know, saddle them and get up on their left side. So we do everything else on this side as well. It's just, and also keeps them consistent. And when we do rent out our burros, we want them to kind of have a seamless transition from one handler to another, and sharing what works for the burros. So, and each burro actually responds a little bit differently to some different commands. And so I always tell people, like, I love this line right here in their shoulders. So I say anything forward, you want to keep it positive. You want to say, come on, boy, hop up, good boy, Burrito, and whatnot. And you can still, they really respond to that pressure release, okay? So so if you're too much pressure and ha in their face, it's actually going to hold them back and they don't like it. We also continue to look forward if we're running. So if we're running ahead of them, we want to stay looking forward. This turning around behavior and kind of doing a standoff and kind of facing them can actually slow them down, or they're not going to come to you or cross the finish line. So I always try to stay looking where I want them to go, and then just kind of tug that pressure release. Okay. So also from the shoulder back, this is where you can be a little bit more driving with your voice and a little bit more assertive and be like, ha, let's go. Up. And so then sometimes we'll even swat the side of our leg. Sometimes the burros just need a little push. They don't always need a little swat. If we do swat, we might just, you know, go up a little bit, and there Burrito's like ready to go. So the way that Burrito runs particularly is if we're on a wide road. If you're swinging way far out that is also another way to slow down your burro. But if you're in a single track, everyone notices that, wow, my burro is going so fast in the single track. That's because you're lined up right behind him. So Burrito particularly loves it when his runner runs right behind him, and then they just drive him, and you can just and then just get him going. But you know, to keep in mind is when your burros are in pairs as well. If you've got another burro up ahead that the other secondary burro just wants to follow, say they don't want to ever pass, and you've got someone running up there ahead, their burro slows down, I would just, as the tail burro, I would actually just kind of tap that burro or just kind of call out their name and get them going, because you know yours is going to follow. So I really beat up or try to push the back burro faster than the one that they're not going to pass, because they just might not go. And so it keeps them happier if they're just following, so you can help encourage that lead burro. And also want to make sure that you are in front of the burro on a downhill. It might seem a little scary that your burro might run over you, but there's ways to just kind of keep them back. You can kind of jerk that lead rope, but also just make sure you put your arm out. Do not let them get ahead of you on a downhill at all, especially with running. But we drive them behind and let them go forward. I know for many folks that are just getting out, we hear this a lot. How do I get my burro out solo? It is really hard to get a solo burro out to go unless you possibly trailer them to a trail or a location somewhere else. And, you know, don't have a lot of expectations for your burros. They do sense your expectations. And sometimes if you're too far back on the lead rope and they start zigzagging on the trail, you might be back too far, or you might be putting too much pressure on them. And so they're trying to just bail out on the trail. But if you just start out slow, start in a walk, and then you can start trotting with them as you go. Also having them learn to process everything out front, and bikes and people and whatnot. They'll actually respond better during a race, and they'll actually be really great leading racing burros if you can teach them to kind of process the things that are coming at them. So that's mainly what we do. Really encourage people to get out and get in groups. At least 3 is really helpful, and that's a great way to form some new friendships and keep burros happy. And we're loving it here in Colorado. We've taken BLM burros and feral burros and killpin rescue burros from the Equine Rescue Network back east. We have partnered with, and they've sent us burros, and we've transformed their lives and given them a job and given them things to do, and they have been absolutely happy, and they actually wait to get their halter on and jump in the trailer and go for a run. So so it's a great way to rehabilitate scared and feral burros and have them go along with you, and it's very rewarding. So so get out there and rescue some burros and come train with us. And thank you so much for having us.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Brad and Amber. Video froze, and so we were only able to listen to you for a part of that time, but I think you guys have some videos online that we might be able to add links to at the end of this recording when we put it up on YouTube for other people to see. We have some questions, so since you guys are still on right now and this is all fresh in our minds, let me ask you a couple of the questions that we have received about you guys. Does that work okay?
Yes, sure.
Okay. People are asking, when you're racing with the donkeys, do you run behind them, next to them, or in front of them most of the time? You did cover some of that, but maybe give a little bit more detail about how that part works.
Sure. Yeah, we try to stay behind them for the most part. I mean, even on a straightaway, on an uphill, really like them to lead. Like them to pull and kind of, you know, do that work and everything like that. They enjoy it once they're taught that that's the way to go. But definitely on the downhills, you want to be in front on the downhills, unless you're fast enough to keep up with your donkey. But they definitely can get a lot faster on the downhills. We had some this past weekend that were doing 5-minute miles on a downhill. And so I guess it just depends on how fast you are.
They won.
Right. Yeah, they won. So you know, recommend definitely being in front on the downhills. There are going to be times when obviously you will need to kind of pull your burro and kind of, you know, do that little pressure release thing. But even if you have one burro and you've got two people, you know, just helping along, sometimes one person might just need to lead. That burro might need you to be their lead burro, you know. And so if you can't get together with other people, but if you've got someone else that can at least urge from behind as well, just to keep that burro moving. And we don't have treats on the trail too. I wanted to let people know that when we do race and we do train, we actually don't give them treats at all, because that would just reinforce them to stop regularly, and we don't want to do that. So we do reward them after a good run, and sometimes they get nice treats that way. So
Okay, that's great. So if a rescue wanted to have a donkey race day or a donkey events day and include donkey races, let's say they don't have pack saddles, they don't have the traditional equipment, they just have some nice donkeys at their rescue, they have some adopters who have rescued donkeys and are eager to do something with them, maybe local donkey owners are interested. How would those people initiate starting having those? Would there be a certain minimum number that would need to be participating in order for it to make sense? How long are the races? How much space is needed? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
yeah, so we normally go out like regularly, almost weekly, and hit any local trails, and we run regularly. If you are wanting to do burro racing as a fundraiser and whatnot, I mean, you can do it low key. Depends on your area, and if it becomes something a little bit bigger where you need to have permits and whatnot. I know anyone is welcome to reach out to Brad at the WPBA Media Relations at yahoo.com email, and he's got a whole list of information on how to get races started in your state, and kind of a little checklist of things that you might need to get for like an official race. But I mean, it's definitely up to whoever's organizing the race, whether they want to do saddles or not. And we definitely encourage it without, you know, as well. Here in Colorado, it's just tradition. So we keep that up. But again, it's a benefit to have the burros carrying your provisions too. So.
If you guys can hear me, I'm close enough to the microphone, but I just strongly urge you to have a fun run and see what kind of interest you have in your area. Maybe do 2 in a year before you do a real race, but no saddles, and then start encouraging people to grab saddles and start having regulation. Even when you get your regulation race off the ground, those that run with the saddle and the regulation gear, they could be part of the regulation race. And if you have a smaller, short race, a 3-mile race, those could be without saddles and for beginners. And then you put up an 8, 9, 10, 12-mile race for the people that want to become professional runners and start doing this sport for real. And so that's the best way to do it. We want to encourage all. We don't want to discourage anyone, but the real prize money and all that stuff needs to be with the people that are doing the regulation. But the first year, you probably should just have the 2 fun runs and see what kind of interest your neighborhood has.
Okay, that sounds great. When you are working with these burros to get them ready to run, how much time do you think people need to be prepared to invest in just going out with their burro on their own? Is it something you can just kind of pull them out of the pen and take off? Or do you need to do real training?
So it depends on their level. I mean, if they're just yard ornaments, they've never really done anything, hopped in trailers or anything like that, you're going to have to get all the basic work done. They're going to have to know what whoa is and hup and how to move out and how not to be dangerous. So those things do take a little bit of time, but burros, one of the reasons the miners love them so much is how quickly they learned and adapted to their new environment and to their ability to pick up and not hurt the miner. So unlike a horse could take a bit to train, a burro is probably less than half the time. So I would say from within the first week, you're out of the pen and you're doing walks. By week 2, you've stopped your walking and you've done a little jogging. So I think it can go pretty quick if you spend daily time with your animal. If you have to have spaces in between, it just takes longer. Depends on how much distance you put between your schedule of training.
And
Okay.
also, if you have a burro that's really like easy to handle and has already kind of maybe picked this up really well, like Burrito, for example, we always use him sometimes for a lot of the feral or new burros. We get calls and they'll say, hey, can you come help us get our burros out, get to running? And so we usually take Burrito out, and he's just a really great, just kind of a leader, and he'll actually calm the other burros down, and then they get to follow him and kind of pick up their lead. And so as people are doing these activities and finding that maybe one burro really excels right away, they can definitely get at using that one burro as a leader to train the others and other friends that are needing that help as well.
That sounds great. Okay, we have a question asking, do you have different categories where kids compete against each other, or do the kids who participate against adults? And is there a minimum age that you have thought appropriate for kids?
What a great question. You know, in our world, it's a burro race. It really doesn't have much to do with the human. It doesn't matter your age, your sex, doesn't matter, anything whatsoever. So there's people out there with disabilities that are running because they've made a connection with animals. We do give out trophies to the youngest ass, the oldest ass, and the last ass.
For some races.
Yeah, in some of the races. So we do recognize those that are out there. You know, we've handed trophies to 80-year-old men and women, and they're still out there getting it done. You know, and we've seen 8-year-olds do this sport. The reason we don't give it a category, even though on our website you can break it down by age, gender, and things like that, we don't give it a category physically at the race because it's all about them. You're only as fast as your ass. And if you don't build a relationship with your ass, better pack a lunch because it might be a long day. The connection between the human and the animal.
And we do have some races that we offer, like we've got Creed coming up on the 12th of June, and that's down South Colorado, and we do offer some mini donkey races for some of the young kids and families, adults, whoever wants to run with a little mini down the street, down the block and back, just to give it a little try or just for fun. It has increasingly gotten busy, as Brad mentioned, and so I don't necessarily rent burros to young children. When in my rental process, it's just becomes a little bit, there's not enough time, I think, for some of the young that basically is one. We don't trade in the race or anything like that either. So, anyway, but that's it, mainly for safety reasons, but it is an extreme sport. It's pretty extreme. So it is different on race day than it is when you're out just doing it fun. And if it is just a fun run, definitely, each race director person will need to determine the ages that are allowed. So.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions about miniature donkeys. So I'll ask a couple of things at once, and then we'll take some of the questions that have come in from Marjorie. Some folks want to know whether miniature donkeys can compete, and is it difficult or possible to get the gear for miniature donkeys?
He's all race at any shape or size. Even we've got some little chubby donkeys that just recently just started picking up and running, and we thought they'd probably be a little bit slower given their weight recently. And so but these activities they're doing actually help to slim and trim them down, helps prevent depression as well. And donkeys, as we heard, they're just as mighty as the bigger burros, and sometimes they can be faster or just as fast. So, yeah.
Well, we think the minis have what we call a Napoleon complex. They don't know that they're small. This is all about heart. And when you have a donkey that's 32 beating a donkey that's 12.
Well, I think we may have lost sound on you guys. Okay, so unless we have the sound come back, we'll switch to some questions that we have for Marjorie. Marjorie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. All right. One of the questions that came in advance in email is sort of a multi-part question, and I'll read you these. Liz writes, I have a mammoth donkey and will be getting another mammoth in July. How do I bond with both boys, especially especially the new one? How long should I wait with the new one before getting on him? He's like my other one, he's broke to ride. How do I make sure both boys are bonded to me more than one another? I'm thinking having my current boy go to a donkey trainer for a month for a refresher. Will I lose a bond with him when he comes back? So this is a good time to talk about the bonds donkeys have with humans and with each other, and how to work with that in early days.
Well, to start with, are they geldings? So that's
I believe they are.
because that makes a big difference. So if you have a couple of geldings and you're wanting to get them to get to know each other, start by separating them with a fence so they can you can see how they're going to react to one another. If there are no other donkeys on the premises and just the two, you can feel pretty assured that the two of them are going to pair off and actually become quite strongly bonded friends. That being the case, if you're going to send one off to the trainer, I would highly recommend sending both, especially if you're wanting to develop that bond. And as far as a bond with you is concerned, that's up to you. You spend time with them, see how they are reacting to them. If you're always fair with them, you know, if your timing is good and you apply proper release, in other words, that's a treat, that's a reward when you give release when necessary. If you're paying attention to their needs, you know, although we talk about the stoicism of donkeys and how they don't show pain and distress when they're sick, they are very, very expressive. They will get smiles that curl up like this when they're happy. They swish their tails when they're anxious. So there's a lot of expressions that come from a donkey, just not expressions of pain. So don't get the two confused. They will let you know how they feel about you. They'll want to come up and throw their head up on your shoulder. They want to come near you. They're not running from you when you walk into the pen. And if they are, then maybe it's a good time to think about just doing, you know, sometimes less is more. Go into the pen with them. And I'm going to hear a lot of donkey aficionados here. They're going to go insane. Throw a little bit of alfalfa around your feet and sit there and read a book. And you'll be amazed. If you do a little bit of that every day, they're going to start looking at you as a resource. So we all like to think that they love us, but really we're a resource.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
So, to be quite
Marjorie,
honest with you, you know, we provide them the scratches and the love and the care, and we make them feel good. So to them, we're a resource, and they will guard their resources fiercely because they have to survive.
Marjorie, while speaking about relationships, we have a question about separating bonded donkeys. So there are a lot of situations where rescues have a donkey population. Someone will come and want to adopt one of the donkeys, and can rescues directors assume that the donkeys will make new friends with other horses or donkeys, or should they try to keep bonded ones together?
We won't do it. We just let the adoption fall through. If they won't take, that's the rule. If you come here and we're looking around for donkeys for you, and you find a donkey that you just really, really like, you got to take the buddy. Buddy has to go too. So but we do have our social butterflies that bounce from one friend to the other. They're just like that. And those are the ones that we can adopt out singularly, as long as you have another equine on your end and you're picking them as a companion animal. We will never, ever allow one to go out and be by themselves. That's just, we won't do it.
Okay. Marjorie, can you talk for just a minute or two about what you recommend as the best feeds and supplements for donkeys' best health, and especially as those differ from what the needs of horses are?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because, you know, you have to, you know, as I was saying in my presentation, you have to take into account where you are regionally. You have to take into account what your soils provide and what is available in your forages. We're very low in copper here in our area, but our grass is quite rich. So, you know, we have to be careful because donkeys are always on the verge of laminitis. You know, you know, if they're getting too much sugar in their diet and not balanced out with enough fiber, it can really wreak havoc with their hooves. So you really want to stay completely away from any kind of molasses, cereal feeds. I know that Donkey Sanctuary UK has, over the last 50 years or so, done necropsies on over 17,000 donkeys, and they have found that the donkeys that were fed sweet feeds, 98% of them did have ulcers. So it's just, you know, you have to make sure that they're constantly able to chew. It's a real dilemma. You want them chewing because that saliva protects the throat. It's all part of the digestive system, but all those calories. So you can do a mixture of straw and good nutritious hay. Because the other thing that happens is that people will hear this advice and they go to the extreme. They feed only straw. They won't give them any kind of pelleted feed. They won't give them any kind of supplements. And yeah, they can survive on it, but they're not going to bloom. And if you want to show your donkeys and you want them to look the best that they can look, you're going to want to give them a supplement to their feed. We like AZ copper here because, as I said, we are very depleted in copper. It also carries all of the things that are needed for a strong immune system. So you would want to look regionally into what regional owners in your area, because there are some areas that are very high in selenium, some are depleted in selenium, some are high in copper, some are depleted in copper. So you really do need to be regional in your feed choices. But one strict rule is to minimize your sugar and your protein.
Okay, very good information. Someone asks Marjorie, if you suspect a donkey of having Cushing's, would the symptoms be the same or different as with horses?
So you have to understand Cushing's affects the pituitary, and the pituitary controls the endocrine system, and the endocrine system controls everything in their body. So you can have one that it's affecting the adrenals. So that animal is going to be very flight oriented, will lose a lot of weight. One thing though that we do find that is common in all of our Cushing's donkeys, they start to lose muscle mass, top line. So that's pretty common, whether they get overweight or they get too thin or they get real spooky. One thing that is common throughout is that loss of top line. We do have some with Cushing's, they still shed out nicely. So you can't necessarily go by that, although it is a telltale sign, a donkey that won't shed.
Okay.
And the other thing with Cushing's, if you get them on the percent, it presents itself in their feet. So you're going to have a lot of hoof problems with Cushing's unless you get them on the percent. It really helps them a lot.
Okay. Someone asks about what's best for fiber for especially donkeys, and is there a particular straw that you like to see people keep in front of their donkeys?
Well, we, you know, just a good bedding straw, because we're mixing it in with nutritious hay. We're just trying to slow them down on taking the hay. It's not so much about eating the straw as it is about slowing them down on eating the nutritious hay. You're going to want to avoid any straws that have a lot of the head stem, like the barley and oats and so forth, because otherwise you're really just feeding them more calories. You know, you just, it's whatever is regional to you, whatever is available to you. They're different. It's different. You can't go in one store in Texas and go to another store in California and buy the same thing.
So with horses, if a horse chews on the bark of a tree or eats the bark of a fence, then people are concerned because it can do real damage to horses. but with burros of donkeys,
With burros and
that's sort
donkeys,
of part
if
of
someone
their
puts a
nature.
tree down around you, ask them for the log and give it to your donkeys. They will have that thing stripped. High fiber is really, really important to donkeys. They are browser grazers, and they do quite well on a high fiber diet. Another thing that we do with our donkeys too is that once a week we also do a nice bran mash, and we use you know Metamucil fiber to help clean them out, so that eliminates any kind of sand colic or any of those disruptions. So we do that once a week as well.
Yeah, we have a question. What can you tell us about sand belly? How do you treat it and how do you stop it?
I just told you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you do, yeah, once a week. So I have a little formula, and it's really makes it kind of a treat. The main ingredients are it's so you can go and pay for Sand Clear, the high dollar stuff, or you can go to Walmart and buy their off-brand Metamucil, which is called fiber, and it works just great. It's the psyllium that you're after. So so for each one of our donkeys, we're going to calculate about a quarter of a cup of the psyllium. We're going to add a little oil. We're going to chop up some carrots, and then we're going to mix it with water. And we feed all 400 a bran mash on Friday.
Wow, that's I bet you have a lot of volunteers
Saturday's
to
real
help with
fun.
that.
Saturday's
Yeah,
real fun cleaning pins.
yeah. What would you say is the biggest nutritional difference in the needs for donkey nutrition as opposed to horse nutrition? Because we haven't mentioned this, but you guys do have horses too. So you know what horses' nutritional needs are.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest difference?
Well, they all need vitamin E, which they get from pasture, or if they're in a dry lot, we'll provide the powdered Elevate. Um, and they all need the nutrition, but one of the differences is, of course, the horses do. We will every horse on the property gets a flake of hay, a flake of alfalfa with each feeding. Um, and if they're in a dry lot, they'll get a little bit more. The donkeys, only if they're dry lotted will they get any alfalfa. It's a quarter of a flake, and I'll tell you why. And I can hear everybody screaming right now. Oh, never feed them alfalfa. Well, alfalfa is nature's perfect food. It's high in fiber, 28% fiber. It's high in all the nutritional needs that they have. It's got a perfect balance of calcium and phosphorus. What you have to watch for is the protein. So that's why we cut it down to a quarter. So we're able to provide them with the nutritional value of the alfalfa while reducing the amount of protein that they get.
Okay.
And then we only do that if they're in a dry lot. If they're on grass, they don't need it.
Okay. We are almost out of time. We have a couple of really good questions I want to ask, but these have to be like 15, 30-second answers, okay? What is the best kind of stimulation for bored donkeys?
Oh gosh, they like balls. They love balls. Sportigo makes a great ball. And a buddy is the other best stimulation, having a friend.
Okay. The other question is, someone is asking about, is there a fly spray that you really like that their donkeys are getting eaten up by flies?
Oh,
They've
God.
tried bye-bye insects on their horses, but it doesn't seem to work on donkeys. They're wondering what to stay away from that might be dangerous.
We were donated Ecovet, and we've really liked it. But I'll tell you, the flies really have been a problem, and they are brutal. They will just completely turn legs into hamburger in a very short period of time. You can use tube socks and then hold them up at the top with a little bit of vet wrap around the top of the sock. You can also use fly predators. We have too many animals here for fly predators to work, but for a small operation, they're awesome. And you can also put a little bit of vinegar in their feed. They like the vinegar. So you can add about a quarter of a cup of depending. I mean, if you're feeding them only a cup, you know, you can do a little bit less than that. But that vinegar will come out in their sweat, and it helps keep the flies away. But we see that they tend to go towards donkeys that have more metabolic issues than the other ones.
Okay. Well, we could talk to you all day long, both you guys, the ones, and you too, Marjorie. We have a lot of questions that we didn't have time to get to. When we put the recording of this up online, we'll put links to your emails and your websites, and send us anything else you'd like us to attach so that people can get in touch with you directly to ask other questions or get involved in your programs and things like that. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Brad
Thanks
and
for doing
Amber.
this, Blaine.
Well, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
There's not a lot of information that's generally put out about the donkeys and burros, and we just wanted you guys to have an opportunity to talk about it.
You
Now,
know,
before
just a real quick, something I was quite surprised when we had a group castration, and I was asking the vet student how much time is dedicated to donkeys in their vet classes. 1 page. 1 page.
Really? Yeah. Well, maybe we'll help that with that some here today. This will be up online. We'll do a little bit of editing and we'll work on it and get it up so people will have it available long term. Okay, so before we go, we have a little bit of business to take care of. Joanna Grossman is with AWI, which is the sponsoring host of the Homes for Horses Coalition. Joanna, do you have some information you would like to share with us about what's going on legislatively with equine protection efforts right now?
Sure. Thanks, Elaine. I will wrap up super quickly in the last few minutes. And thanks again to Marjorie and to Brad and Amber. Those are incredibly informative presentations. And thanks so much to all the participants who took time out of their day-to-day to be here. Just a bit of good news. As some of you may have seen in the Homes for Horses Coalition newsletter, the SAFE Act was actually recently reintroduced in the House of Representatives. That's the federal bill to ban horse slaughter. So obviously that's always been a huge priority for the Homes for Horses Coalition. So I would strongly urge everybody to take a couple minutes to visit our website, awionline.org. You can use the Animal Welfare Institute's Compassion Index to send a really quick note to your representative, urging him or her to support this bill. Again, this is something that we've been working for a really long time. The SAFE Act, this past session of Congress, had the most co-sponsors that it's ever had before. And if we get up to 290 co-sponsors, the bill will move directly to the floor of the House for a vote. So it'll be wonderful to see that passage. A little bit of additional news related to horse slaughter. As some of you may have seen, the Biden administration released its budget just the other day. They included a request to ensure that there is language in the next spending bill so that horse slaughter facilities cannot operate in the US domestically. And that's something we've been advocating for many years as well. So we were pleased to see that, and 116 representatives actually just put in a request for that formally a couple of weeks ago. So again, thanks to everybody, as always, for your advocacy efforts. We really do appreciate it, and it makes a huge difference for legislators to hear from their constituents. So I'll turn it back over to Elaine then.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanna. I want to remind everyone that later in the summer or early fall, we don't have a date yet. It's really hard to get a schedule worked out with her because she's so busy. But Linda Pirelli is coming to do a webinar for us, a live streaming event where she will be, she and one of her top associates actually are going to be talking to us about how to load uncooperative horses in emergency situations. One of the reasons we asked her to do this is because we know of so many situations where rescue directors either get a phone call saying, come right now and get these horses or I'm going to shoot them. and then they get there and they can't get the horses loaded. Other situations, especially on the West Coast, someone will be trying to evacuate their own rescue horses that they managed to get to their rescue, but now they can't get them in a trailer to get them off the property before the fire arrives. The same thing happens a lot with people evacuating from hurricanes. So this is going to be a webinar about, first of all, teaching horses to load while you have the luxury horses and all equines, you know, burros, donkeys, horses, mules. Teach them to load when you have the luxury of time to do that, but also what to do if it's a life or death situation and you have to get animals loaded and off the property. So we'll be providing you with a lot more information about that. We are at the end of our time. Thank you so much to our presenters, to Sydney, who helps us with these online. Thank you to AWI for hosting and sponsoring Homes for Horses Coalition. Thank you all you participants who came today and joined us for this event. We appreciate it. You guys have a great day and we'll see you next time.